We are with John Ralston Saul.
So I'm president of PEN International, which is 144 PEN centers in 102 countries, tens of thousands of writers of every sort around the world. There's nothing else quite like it. And we work very hard on writers in prison, writers in danger, and in the last few years, as things have got worse here, of course, we've focused more and more on what can we do. And with the invitation from Mexican PEN and the demands of our own members saying, what is going on in Mexico? Why is a great country like this, cultural center, great writing culture, why are we seeing dozens of writers being killed? And it's growing. It's getting worse and worse. It's moving towards 100. And there's no sign of it slowing down. And there are basically almost no killers who've been arrested, tried and convicted and put in jail, which is what you actually have to do in a law-abiding society. So we came here to be in solidarity with Mexican writers, and the event today was, I think, a fantastic illustration of that solidarity, because you had, 60, 70 writers all speaking for 1 minute. I think I got 3 minutes, and both the foreigners and the Mexicans, some of them were very famous, Elena Poniatowska, some of them were from Juarez, and very courageous on the front line, if you like, all mixed together by alphabetical order. So there was no, this is the important one, this is the unimportant one, all together saying, this is not acceptable, this has to end. And I guess what we're really saying is freedom of expression, which is of the writers and the journalists, but it's of also the readers and the listeners and the viewers, is being severely damaged. And we have to take that freedom of expression, which has been shoved into the corner as if it was not important and not to be debated. We have to grab it and pull it out into the middle of the public debate, because all successful democracies are built on freedom of expression. They're not built on successful economies. The most violence in this country is in some of the richest states. They're not built on power of the police or the military. They're built on freedom of expression. That is the practical motor of a successful middle-class democracy. There is no way out of that. And if you're killing journalists and creating an atmosphere of fear so that other journalists can't speak, it's not going to work. The society is not going to work. It's going to get worse.
What do you think is the cause of all these killings and all this situation?
Well, there's no question that, Mexico has moved into a period of citizens choosing leaders. Elections where there's actual choice. And this is a big change because there were levels of corruption before which have remained the same. And when you have those levels of corruption, they link things like organized crime to government, police, etc. And people don't like to talk about this, but unless you get the level of corruption down to what it is in most countries, it exists everywhere, but not at high levels. It exists at like 5%, 10%, not whatever, 20%, 25%, whatever it is here. If you have to face up to the level of corruption and get it down, at that point, you're able to deal with the problems that are the violence problems that are being faced today. You have to put in place the laws, that will make this work. There's a law before the Senate at the moment. It's not a magic bullet, but you pass that law, it's one of the pieces in building a law-abiding, law-based approach towards freedom of expression and democracy. Pass the law, get on with it. And then put in place the proper support for the people who are supposed to be finding the murderers, arresting them, prosecuting them, putting them in jail. There's a special prosecutor. Does he have the powers? It's two things. Does he have the powers? No. If he had the powers, would he use them? One step at a time. Give him the powers, and then we can push all of us to make sure that those things are done.
On the contrary, there are laws in the Congress that, for example, they're going to quote or give less freedom on the internet and things like that.
Well, there's that problem, which I don't know as well. Because people are trying to do that in other countries as well. There's this international fight going on between whether the internet will be free or whether it will be controlled by governments and commercial enterprises. So I suppose if you add that problem in Mexico to the other problems, this is one of the few areas where the freeness in a country where there are difficulties of freedom of expression is extremely important. But there are also, all these old-fashioned controls, like all the libel laws at the state level, which are basically designed to silence people, or the laws that protect public officials from being criticized, which are, again, a pre-democratic leftover. These things have to be dealt with. Or the army, which plays a major public role, when people do something wrong, they're judged within the military system. They need to be judged within the civil system. These are very practical things. You get those things right, and the democracy starts to function in a reasonable way. It's never perfect. I don't come from a perfect democracy, nor would I claim to. But you get the critical mass right, but that requires action and energy and conviction.
So the Congress is not representing the people in these kind of laws and things?
Well, if the laws aren't passed, they're not doing their job. I have great respect for people who go into public life, and I'm not here to say that to make a blanket criticism of public officials in Mexico. I like Mexico. I have respect for Mexico. I know there are many public officials, and there are elected officials who actually are really serious about this, and they're not corrupt, and they want to get things done. That's why I say if you have a high level of corruption, it prevents the good people from doing things, because they're undermined all the time by this invisible force of corruption. And that stops the laws from being passed. That stops the laws from being enforced. But you don't see it. It's sort of invisible.
What should the people do, or the leaders of opinion? Are they not making their jobs, or what?
Well, when I say that what writers have to do is to help drag freedom of expression into the center of the public debate, there is this traditional responsibility of citizens, which is that they have to want to be part of that. We're not better than anyone else. That's why freedom of expression is the writer and the reader, the broadcaster and the viewer. We're all the same. So we can't be there alone. We have to be there with the citizen. And I thought it was great today. It was full. It wasn't just the writers. It was also the listeners and the readers. And the broadcasters.
Yes, it's known that there are two main TV networks in Mexico that they are kind of part of the problem, aren't they?
You're going to be a better expert on this than I am. One of the phenomena that's happening all over the world over the last 30 years is an increased concentration of ownership, particularly of television, but also of newspapers. It's wrong everywhere. And when you have concentration, it has a lessening impact, a damaging impact on freedom of expression. This is a debate that needs to be won in many countries, but its impact in a country where there's already a problem, of course, again, will be greater. But there is also a kind of international problem, which is that everybody's accepted the logic of deregulation, which meant that fewer and fewer people could own more and more of the means of communication. That was a mistake. It's going to be a big battle to undo this, but it will have to be undone. And I'm not even talking about Mexico. I'm talking about it's going to have to be undone at the international level in country after country after country. Okay?
Okay. Do you think there's an international influence on all this violence, or what's the problem with it? What's the cause of all this violence in Mexico that then ends up in the violence to the journalists?
Well, the international aspect of it, and we've talked about it in this one-page document, is that there's no question that drug consumption in the United States and Canada, but the United States obviously the biggest piece, is the kind of consumption end. It's the end of the process. So that's clearly a role, and I think one could say that the other two countries aren't doing their job when it comes to dealing with the consumption problem. And dealing with it isn't sending the police out. Dealing with it is finding out why is there such consumption and what can be done about it. But The second factor is that, there's organized crime in the rest of North America, and of course the United States has had some involvement with trafficking in arms in Mexico. So these are all elements. No, there are no innocent parties here. There are no innocent parties. Everybody has to take their responsibility. But the primary responsibility lies with the Mexican government, because their primary responsibility is to protect their citizens. People have to stop saying, isn't it terrible what the organized crime is doing? Organized crime is in the business of killing people if they need to. Government is in the business of protecting its citizens. That's where the primary responsibility lies.
I think these 7 points that are on this paper, what are they really fast?
To sum them up, the military need to be, and the police need to be subjected to civil courts. The positions such as special prosecutor need to have the proper powers to act. There need to be the proper budgets and energy and conviction to actually do things with the laws that are passed. And then there are the subjects I mentioned a moment ago that have to do with the responsibilities of the United States and Canada.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.